And now I'm going to pass the controls over to Burl. And welcome, Burl. You are the Steward Education Director here at Everence, and I will turn it over to you. You can share a little bit about who you are and what you do and begin your webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate all your work in helping to coordinate and set this webinar up. She's our technology guru when it comes to these kinds of events, and she also, I need to credit her for making my PowerPoints presentable. I'm not as skilled at that kind of thing as she is, so she does a lot of behind-the-scenes work for which we are very grateful. But I am talking to you today from my home in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and thanks to technology, we can go into each other's homes in this way. I'm really consider myself more of a teacher. I had been a pastor for about 23 years before joining Everence 10 years ago, and I thrive on the interaction. Now, the webinar here doesn't allow for that very well. However, you can help bridge the gap a little bit by chiming in with questions, and I really encourage you to do that. It's not an interruption. Most likely, if you have a question, others will as well. My tendency with these kinds of things is to kind of plow through and go fairly quickly. I don't want to bore people or linger too long on any slide. So if I'm using acronyms or if I'm going at a speed that's not helpful and skipping over things, please slow me down. And the best way you can do that is by asking a question, and Melissa will bring that to my attention. I will say as well that all the materials that I'm going to be referring to are available free of charge on our website, and I'll give it to you now and we'll show it to you later at the end. But everence.com/financial coaching. It's pretty simple. Everence.com/financial coaching. We do provide on-site live trainings of about 4 to 5 hours that will go into depth on what is it that a coach does. And it is fairly involved in terms of certain skill levels when it comes to listening. We're not looking for people that are quick to try to fix problems or to tell somebody else what to do, but we're looking for good listeners, motivators, encouragers, non-judgmental people. We'll get into some of those qualifications. But we do a lot of role play when we're doing on-site training, which we don't have the benefit to here in an introduction. The other thing we do is we introduce you to all kinds of tools and resources that you can pull from or a coach from your church would do, depending on the kinds of questions and needs that the participant you're working with would require. So we're not going to show you all that. This is more of an overview and a general introduction. As we move ahead here, I'd like us to be thinking about what a coach is and what a coach isn't. So, Melissa, if you could help me with the slide. Can't seem to be moving that one forward. The definition that we use really looks at this whole idea of financial coaching involving building a trusted one-on-one coach and participant relationship to coach performance improvements that help the participant meet and sustain his or her financial goals. And a couple of key words here are terminologies for the people that we have involved. The first is the coach. Now, when you think of a coach, you might think of an A-type personality marching up and down the sidelines, yelling at people on the grounds doing the plays. That's not the kind of image we want to create for this kind of a program. We are looking for mild-mannered people that are non-threatening, non-anxious, that are motivators, that meet people where they are. So don't mix the metaphors maybe from the sports world to what we're looking for here. And coaching really is a concept used in many different disciplines. There's fitness coaches and health coaches and business coaches and executive coaches, and these are folks that walk alongside. And a lot of the coaching techniques are pretty similar across the discipline and across different industries. And so when we're talking about a financial coach, we're talking about someone that is going to be assisting and advocating for somebody in this whole area of finances. And also the coach works to help improve somebody in small steps and incremental ways so that they can build up confidence, particularly if they've been struggling with their personal finances, and to help them in a way that sustains them in some of their financial goals and plans. what is a coach and what is not a coach? I've given a few clues to that already, but I'd like you to look at this list as I read them out, and maybe you'll be surprised with what is not on the list as we talk about a financial coach. First of all, we're looking for people that are well-adjusted and constantly seeking personal improvement in themselves. Uh, a good coach is someone who has a general enjoyment of life, so someone with a positive attitude, not looking for negative people here. Someone that's passionate about growing others, that they're not just into themselves, but they're really into serving and caring for other people. Someone who understands the distinction and balance between being and doing. A lot of us can be doers and task-oriented. I'll admit that's kind of my tendency. A coach is someone that does do, but is also good at being and being present and being active and listening, not needing to be the one that carries the conversation, but asking good questions to get the conversation passed over to the participant. Is someone who's able to suspend judgment and stay open-minded. There are some folks who are in financial trouble because of their own choices. We know that, but there are others who, to no fault of their own, might have lost a job, might have had medical problems that have set them back. And regardless of the situation, being judgmental doesn't help with folks that are trying to get themselves moving in the right direction. Someone who's a bit of a risk taker, whenever you're entering into a relationship with somebody that's struggling and who might be raising questions and issues that are out of your realm of expertise, that's kind of a risk-taking thing, and it's out of your comfort zone. So we just recognize that, and we're looking for people that are willing to kind of go outside their comfort zone a little bit. Someone who's a visionary, able to see the big picture and reinvent themselves and help someone else reinvent themselves. Someone who loves to strategize and find new ways of doing things for themselves, but also in these helping relationships. So that's a little bit of what we look for. And if you look over that list, you might be surprised that we're not looking for somebody that has a BA in economics or financial management. And that's by intention. Now, if someone who has those skills also happens to have some of these, that's wonderful. But we're looking first of all for the kind of person who has the right people skills. The other, we can provide resources for them to help somebody that's at a very basic level of wanting to move forward financially. So the first level of skills is people skills, ability to listen, ability to be quiet, and to ask the right question at the right time. And those are not easy skills. They sometimes require a little bit of training, and that's what we try to do in our training, whether it's virtual, that's we're looking at doing 4 to 5 hour virtual training as well as on-site training. So you don't have to be an expert in finances to be a financial coach. Next slide here, if we could go to the goals of coaching. And let me just read through these. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. The goals is to discuss and understand top concerns of the participant, not the coach. Secondly, to support the participant in the achievement of self-defined goals. So maybe the goals that a person sets wouldn't be your first choice, but you have to help this person move in a direction that they own. And so owning their goals, helping them shape as you go, but really being there to partner with the participant. Supporting specific actions toward the goals. So once we set our goals, sometimes there's several steps required to get there. Facilitating participant-driven decision-making, and the key idea there is it's got to be participant-driven, making the ideas their ideas. And you can help guide it with the questions you ask, but we have to be careful about being too directive lest they lose ownership in the process. And also promoting information seeking, trying to create a curiosity in the participant that will want them to learn more and do better, particularly in this area if they haven't had any type of mentoring, any type of training in their family of origin, about being a good financial manager. We want to create a curiosity through small successes to learn more. And then we want to move on to objectives. Once we have our goals set, what are the steps that'll help get us there? Developing trusting relationship is really key. This is a relational person I'm talking about when we're looking at a coach, and it takes time to build trust, particularly when it comes to opening up about money. No one wants to talk about what they've done wrong or what they failed to do when it comes to these kinds of issues. And so it takes time to build a relationship where people can open up and be that free with what they haven't done well. Understanding the current situation of an individual. we'll need to go into the past, but also understanding the present in order to develop a plan for the future. Part of the objective is setting the goals that we talked about. It's developing an action plan, measurable and achievable steps. It's providing accountability, but not a heavy-handed accountability. Identifying resources and tools as you go. As we're listening, as we're asking follow-up questions, we can try to then determine what can we bring to the table to help this person. And that's part of our job at Everence, is to make sure you have the tools to do your job. And then making referrals as necessary. Knowing when you're out of your depth. And we'll give you ideas of who you can talk to, who the resources are that you can go to. And that's the beautiful thing. We have multiple tiers of expertise within Everence, whether it's through the credit union, whether it's through our advisor system, whether it's through the church relations representative, whether it's through some of our partners like Lutheran Social Services that do a lot of counseling and debt kind of advice giving to individuals that call in. You could partner with your participant, call that toll-free number, begin the relationship to talk about the credit card debt, or to talk about foreclosure challenges that people might be facing, or home buying readiness, or what do you need to be thinking about if you're going to be taking out a loan from some vending organization. So we have those kinds of people that you can refer to. Now I'd like us to look at this coaching distinctives chart and spend a little time on this, because there's a number of ways that we can help individuals that are struggling in whatever area we're thinking about. And I really like this spectrum because it goes from what's very directive, problem-solving, kind of helping, to the very non-directive, which is what coaching is really about. And that's why it takes some training and I think some realignment on the way that we sometimes think about helping others. Now, if we're involved in a training experience, which is really what I'm doing here tonight, it's very directive. I mean, I'm going to be doing 95% of the talking, even though that's not my preference. That's the kind of the way this thing is set up. And in training, you tell people what to do, or you give people information that they need to know so they're informed. We understand that. At some point, it moves towards this whole solving of somebody's problem. And it might be more, more directive than it would be with coaching, for sure. We move towards the consulting as we start moving from telling people what to do to giving advice that people can take or not. We offer guidance. We move into mentoring, and we're starting to ask the questions and spending more time on getting the participant or the audience engaged. But you'll notice that coaching is way over on that non-directive side. It's way over on partnering for exploration of solutions. And it's really trying to maximize on the involvement and conversation of the participant. So we're not wanting coaches to be trainers. We don't want the coach to be dominating the conversation. We want the coach to be asking those open-ended questions that lead towards the interaction. And if the participant at some point seeks advice and seeks counsel, then we share it. But it's really helping the person raise the questions and determine their own ideas of what needs to happen. That way they own it. If we just tell them, they may not own it. They might actually be turned off by that. So we want them to turn on to the idea that they can be involved in their own problem solving. So we talk a lot too about asking the right questions. And this next slide looks at questions that can be helpful or maybe aren't helpful. One of the things we really emphasize in our training is that why questions are often judgmental questions. They're often questions that come kind of from the top down. For example, let's say you give somebody a homework assignment as a coach, and the participant goes home and they come back and they haven't done it. Well, the first response is, why didn't you do the homework? Which can be a very condescending, judgmental question. Another way of saying it is, how could I have helped you? Or how can I help you now to get this assignment done? Or what is it that you found challenging? Not quite as threatening, still kind of helping to guide the conversation to elicit some kind of response, but not quite as strong as why. And so when we do our training, we really help folks think about reshaping what a why question could be like using a how, what, or who. It's really reframing the way we engage in conversation. So the caution here is that getting away from the why, because why can be judging and critiquing, and using the how, what, or who is probably more helpful. On the next slide, we look at this acronym of COACH. And the C for coach stands for competencies. And this is what we're trying to elicit with the questions. We're trying to figure out what is the situation that this person is in, what are their strengths, and yes, what are their growth areas, but we really want to build on their strengths and affirm the strengths as a place from which to move. So we're identifying whatever competencies might be there in spite of the challenges that might be in place. Next, we have O, which is for outcome. What do we want to create? What do we want to change? What do we want to overcome? What is their goal? What is it that they need to feel successful? Even if it's a very, very small step, to us it might seem insignificant. For the participant, any kind of movement in the right direction could be a major thing. So helping them with their outcomes. Next is A for action. How will they achieve their goal? What are they willing to be committed to? What is the next step between now and when we meet next? And again, we're getting at these action steps by asking questions, not by dictating. But we are prepared, knowing where we want to hopefully allow them to go, and we can guide them with our questions. So action is something that we are engaged in helping them to get towards. Then we go to the next C, which is for checking, and H is also there. In checking, it's where accountability comes in. Can you help them identify barriers as well as supporters? So accountability is kind of a strong word sometimes. So what we like to use is the idea of checking in. We're checking in our next meeting to see how you did with this particular assignment, with this next step. Rather than I'm going to keep you accountable to what we've agreed to here, I'm going to check in. I'm going to see how you're doing and see if there are ways that I could have helped you differently, or we could have set it up differently. And it's very collaborative in that way. So coaching model incorporates competencies, outcomes, actions, and that checking in or that gentle accountability. Now, this next slide gets us familiar with some of the tools that are part of the coaching program that we will go into depth using and getting coaches familiar with as well throughout the 4-hour training. The assignment here is to look at the big picture, look at the wheel of life. And in the top right-hand corner, I might be blocking part of that with my screen, but we have the career and work life of the participant. Then we have money and personal finances on the next one. Then we have health and well-being, family, friend and relationships, personal and spiritual growth, significant other or romantic relationships, recreation, fun and hobbies, and then home, community, and physical environment. Now, we could have included any number of other life issues or topics or themes. We've kind of focused on these 8. And what we would ask then, the instructions are on the left, to draw on one of the dotted lines in each pie slice according to the number scale shown. So you see there in the center left side, numbers 10 to 1, and whatever they feel is really a strength in their life, mark it on the 10 or the 9 or the 8 on that spoke that goes towards the center of the wheel. We can assume that the personal finances is probably going to be pretty low. That might be a 2 or 3. But we're also hoping that maybe the community life is 8 or 9, or maybe the personal spiritual growth is an 8 or 9. So we want to help them see where the strengths are. We want to build them up where we can. Next bullet on the left says closer to the edge, or the 10 indicates the more satisfied you are in that area. Closer to the center, the less satisfied you are, and then likely to end up with a bumpy wheel. So after they put all their dots on those spokes, we have them connect their dots. And the next slide shows what that could look like, where it's not quite as pretty as the sphere we started with. But what it does identify for the coach is where they recognize their strengths are that we can use to build on some of the growth areas, which is probably for sure going to be at least the personal finances. So on the left there, we read that participant has completed the wheel, and you look at it together. You start by asking the participant what's satisfying about the areas they've ranked. Prompt for the next lowest is needed. And then as the participant discusses the lowest rated areas, ask how money impacts those areas as well, because we know if money's a struggle, it's probably going to impact a lot of other areas. It can impact our relationships at home. It can impact a relationship with our significant other, and so on. So this is a really, really helpful tool to kind of gain a picture, gain an understanding of the competencies that we talked about on the earlier slide. Now let's take it to the next slide, and here we have the personal finances wheel. And you've seen what we've done is we've taken that one slice on personal finances and we've divided it out into areas of top right corner there, part of the circles, savings, and then credit report or record, and then health benefits and coverage, and then we have insurance and retirement and charitable giving, budgeting, and debt. So even though people struggle with finances, there may be some areas that are stronger than others. So again, we want to try to get an idea ourselves as a coach, but help the participant also recognize that, you know, maybe they work in a location where they have really good health benefits and really good insurance, and that's a strength within their financial package. So as a coach, it's good for you to know that, and it's good for them to recognize it as well. And maybe they get retirement at work. So there's, you know, 3 areas that might be covered well. Maybe they try hard in their giving, and that is a priority in their life. There's another strength. Probably if these people are coming to coaches, they have problems with debt, maybe problems with saving, maybe problems with budgeting. It wouldn't be surprising to us if that'd be the case. But that's only part of the wheel. So we want to affirm where the strengths are, use those strengths to build up the areas that are weaker. The next slide just kind of gives us the general outline and overview of what an actual coaching training would look like. And again, if we do it live or whether we would do it virtually, if we get enough interest, we would try to run these virtually, probably dividing it into 2 separate trainings, 2 hours just on what's it mean to be a coach and some of the role plays and coaching skills, and then what are the resources that we have that a coach can use. So in these kinds of sessions, we would look at what is needed in a coach, like we did early on, but we'd spend more time developing that. What a coach is and is not. And it's really important to say what it is not so that we can resist the temptation of going to the left on that one chart into the consulting or the training. We don't want it to be set up as a training. We want it really to be set up as a collaborative partnership. Listening skills and asking the right questions is huge, and we just touched on that, but we spend a lot of time developing that. And then we go over activities and resources to use in the coaching relationship. There's a few other things I'll just mention here in terms of some of the tools that we would bring along to these training sessions. We have a whole document on helping people develop emergency savings and how to determine if they have debt and if they have a low emergency savings fund or just a savings account that they can go to rather than using a credit card. A lot of people get into credit card problems because they have no emergency fund set aside for that unexpected occurrence. And so how do they balance out? Should they put any discretionary money they have towards debt? Should they put it all towards a savings account or emergency fund? And we've got different scenarios that help people think through that a coach could guide a participant in thinking about. We also have documents on debt reduction. And how do you go about deciding if you've got 3 or 4 different significant debts, which one to start on, and how do you approach it, and how do you celebrate success in paying one of those off? We also talk about creating a cash flow plan. That's kind of buzz language for a budget. How do you do that? How do you set money aside to do the emergency fund? But how do you figure out if you're spending more money each month than what you're bringing in? Well, first of all, they've got to track what their expenditures are. And so one of the assignments would be to, for 1 month, they write down and keep receipts from everything they spend. That would track all their expenses. And then we also put that alongside any income that they have. And we would develop a budget sheet with them. If they could do it on their own as an assignment, great. If we need to sit there with them and go through all of the receipts and write in their income, For some people, that's a very eye-opening kind of thing. If they have these two columns and they realize that they're spending more money than what they're actually earning, that's not sustainable. That can be very sobering. But we have tools to help you with that. We also talk about a balanced money approach. What does it mean to have a balance between savings and spending and sharing? We do talk about the importance of giving, but not to the point where it's going to create a greater burden for them. I think everybody ought to give something. If it's $1 a week or $5 a week, it helps us feel as though our eyes are on others besides just ourselves. And I think that's important. It's not the amount. It's the idea that we have a balance. And then once life gets into a better situation, once our finances are better established, then we can adjust the formulas that we might have set up for ourselves. But starting with an idea that we want to have balance, that includes sharing, saving, and spending. And we also would talk more about this partnership with other resource people, whether it's knowing resource people in Everence that they can go to if there's a question that they can't answer, whether it's using the Lutheran Social Services Partnership, which is a free resource that anybody can call and get 6 free sessions. You know, if a coach would meet with their participant on an evening and call a counselor at Lutheran Social Services and begin that first conversation on an issue that's beyond the coach's ability to explain, that'd be a great first step, and the coach can serve as a bridge. I think at this point, we'll talk about the next steps after this particular seminar. What do you do with it? Well, depending on your role, if you're an advocate or a pastor or just an interested member of the church, we would encourage you to talk to other leadership people to see whether you think this kind of a program would be helpful in your congregation. It might mean going to the church board and getting some kind of endorsement from them. We also encourage you to begin thinking about who you would tap to be potential coaches in your congregation. I've just given you a kind of a thumbnail sketch of the kinds of qualities we're looking for. We do not suggest that you would go and put an advertisement in your bulletin or speak from the pulpit and say, we're looking for financial coaches, so if you want to do this, see the pastor or the advocate. Oftentimes, the people that might volunteer for this kind of a role are maybe not the kind of people that we'd want. In some cases, they might be. In other cases, it may not be. But we would encourage the advocate or the pastor actually thinking through the people and the gifts of the people in their congregation and tapping and encouraging certain folks to step out and be coaches. There are some congregations that have been doing this kind of thing for a while, and they've actually called these folks financial elders. Or some of your churches may have deacons. These would be excellent folks if they have the people skills and the interest in kind of setting up this partnership. I would also suggest that if you have a benevolence fund or some kind of a compassion fund where you give money to people, it's easy for us to just to keep giving money. And we know ultimately just giving people fish without teaching them to fish isn't helping them long term. And using a partnership of a coach alongside the giving of benevolent monies is a really great way to incentivize people to not only receive a gift from the church, which is a good thing, but to actually look at the systemic problems that might be in place within the way they handle money and help them become money managers. It's amazing to me as I get around the number of people that didn't get any conversation at home about money management. They never had any mentors. And if we're reaching out to people in our community, a lot of these folks wouldn't have had that. Even people within the church might not have had the kind of coaching and prompting and modeling in the home that they might have benefited from. So consider members of the church who could benefit from having a coach as well. And this isn't just for people that are in dire situations. I think this coaching program aspects of it you can pull out if you're a pastor and use it in a premarital counseling session. This could even be done in a group setting if you have 2 or 3 couples. There's a number of tools here that would be excellent for couples to be thinking about as they're beginning to establish habits for their married life. So how do you promote the program within your church? If you're in a rural community and there's maybe 2 or 3 churches around you, you might even think about finding one coach that could serve 2 or 3 churches, and they could go between the congregations. There are some folks that really enjoy this kind of thing, so be thinking about that. Also, contact your church relations representative if you are interested in participating in a future training. They will be the ones that will help coordinate this. If Steve Bustos, who helped to set this up for the direct region churches, is your church relations person, you could go to him. If you're from one of the core market areas where there's a church relations rep that's right in your community, check with them and say you heard about this on the webinar and you would be interested in having your church represented. So I think we've got one question coming in, which is great. And others of you, please do the same. And Melissa, what do we got coming to us?
Yeah, the question is, which tools would be good for couples? Can you be more specific? I know you were talking a little bit previously about that, but what tools would be good for couples?
That's a great question. And, I would say any of them could be. It depends, again, on the issues that they're bringing to the table. But those two wheels that I showed you would be really fascinating, I think, to give one of each to the male and the female and have them fill them out independently based on maybe their family of origin. And it really gives you a window into the life of their family in terms of the strengths of that family of origin home and what they're bringing into their relationship. And then in the same way, when it comes to the financial wheel, they hope, many of them have been single for a while probably, and they could just identify within their own personal life on that financial wheel what have the strengths been and what have the weaknesses been, and then put those alongside each other, and that would be a wonderful window into what they've been experiencing up to the point of them deciding to get married. And it's amazing the number of times that couples, I just heard a story just last week. I was actually in Albuquerque, New Mexico, talking to a group of pastors. And one of the pastors was saying that it got to the point where they were talking about finances, and this was the first time that they actually shared how much student debt they had. And that led to the relationship actually breaking up because it had been a secret. It had been something that hadn't been talked about, and it was so overwhelming once the numbers were shared that they needed to take a break. So those tools for sure. I think the emergency savings piece, if they don't have any practice of that, is really, really critically important. Also, the emergency or the debt management tool, if they're coming into the relationship with debt, to help them before they get married agree on a plan that could be used moving forward. So all the tools really work as kind of a premarital, or even if there's a couple that comes to you and they're struggling with finances and they've been married for a while, these are great places to begin. So any of these tools, any of these coaching techniques aren't just for the crisis kind of situation, but they're really great for just ongoing training and teaching as well, and could be done in a group setting if it's done in a way that's not off-putting to the participants.
Okay, thank you. We have another question that popped up. You can probably see it as well. Judith asks, are these slides going to be available to print out after the session? Burl?
Yeah, they're fine for you to use, and I'll just leave that up to Melissa and Steve to distribute. So if you would like the slides, you're welcome to request them.
Yeah, and I'll second that, Judith. Probably won't be until tomorrow morning, but I'll email out this copy of the slides to the participants.
Let's go to the next slide there, Melissa, where we have the web address. Again, if you want to just take a sneak peek at some of the resources, they are on this website. And we would welcome you going in there and downloading them. And if you're good to go with what's there, we welcome you to do it. We welcome your feedback as well. If you use some of these resources and you would have suggestions on ways we could improve them, we're always eager to hear that. And also, if there are needs in your congregation that you're aware of that you would welcome assistance with, we're always looking for knowing what are the practical ways that we can partner with you. So pass suggestions on to us on what you would value us working on.
Okay, we'll pause for just a second here for some more questions, see if they come up. But I just want to Someone is telling us that the URL doesn't work. I wonder if that's because of it's viewing on a webinar. I'll send the link out, the URL tomorrow morning to you guys, but it
It should
should
be working. I just tried it today, so yeah,
okay.
I think you're right. If it doesn't, when you're off of the webinar or some other setting, let us know.
Yeah, but it's www.everence.com/financial coaching. But I just want to reiterate, thanks everyone for taking time out this evening to learn some about financial coaching. And I don't see any more questions and don't see any hands raised. So at this point, thank you, Burl, and thank you, everyone. And I won't take up any more. We won't take up any more time of your evening. And I'll sign off. Any last words, Burl?
No, thanks for joining us. It would have been boring without you. Wish we could have been a bit more interactive here, but that's kind of the way these things work. So stay in touch if you have any suggestions or questions for us.
Okay. Thank you, and everyone have a great evening. I'll be signing off.
Bye-bye.
Bye.